Hello class, welcome back to demonstration number 4. Today we're going to be taking up the leg and foot bones. So all of you should pull out this handout. Now we talked about this in class the other day. And again, when you're in class, you got to really take advantage of the skeleton and look at these things while you're there. But anyways, when you're looking at the handout I gave you, it's going to talk about the femur. That's this bone. That's this leg bone, right? Connecting into the pelvis. Now, with this bone, there's some parts to it that you got to get familiar with. This is called the head. The head is this round part that's going into the acetabulum. If you remember, the acetabulum is this hole here that the leg goes into like this. And then you've got what's known as the neck, and that's this triangular piece in here. And then this boxy angular shape, the way that we're going to conceive of it, it's known as the great trochanter. And then the leg itself is just known as the shaft. And then this bottom part here, kind of rectangular, kind of a curved rectangular shape, right? And that's known as the lateral and medial condyles, okay? So we know what the medial is, so this is going into the leg, so the medial would be on this side, the lateral, of course, is on this side. And so that's basically what the femur bone is about. I do have on there the patella. The patella is this little shape, the bone of your knee, the kneecap, most people call it. And it has a top, and it has sides, and it has a bottom. It has kind of a particular shape, which we'll draw out for you. Then we have the tibia and the fibia. The tibia is this bone here. It's the lower leg bone, and there's what's called the tibia tuberosity. This is, I showed it to you from the side, it kind of sticks out. It's got a little nose shape in a way. This is going to become important. And then, of course, we have the fibia, which is this knife-shaped bone here, which ultimately is going to sit up in here like this and connect into this little concave area there. And this is going to be on the lateral side of your leg, right? The top of this is called the styloid process. Styloid process is just this little pointy process that comes up. We're going to run into that again when we get into the arm next week. And those are basically, and again, the shaft, okay? That's basically what takes place on the tibia and fibia that we're interested in. And then the foot, okay? So I've got a foot here. It's kind of in pieces. You're looking at the medial side, looking down on the top, the lateral side, okay. So the parts to it is your heel, this piece here, you might be able to see it better this way, is known as the calcaneus. Calcaneus is got an interesting shape to it. This piece that goes on the top of it, that's going to sit here, is called the astragalus. In some books, they're going to call it the talus. The talus or astragalus, we're going to get familiar with this shape and how it sits on the calcaneus. Now, on your foot bone, there's what's called the ankle system and the heel system. And the ankle system is connected to the talus or the astragalus. If you look at this piece together, this first bone here is called the navicular. And then connected to the navicular, you get yourself 3 cuneiform bones. And we keep them simple. We just call it the lateral, the intermediate, and the medial cuneiform bones. And then, as it will say here, I think I've got all this on here. I think the only thing I don't have on here is where it says the 3 cuneiform bones. I don't have lateral, medial, and intermediate, but you'll get familiar with that. And then this is known as the metacarpal bones, the first ones. Meta, as you know, means beyond the carpal bone, so metacarpal. And then the phalanges, okay, coming in here. So those are the parts. You want to get familiar with those parts, And is what I'm going to do with this first drawing is show you those parts in ways to just kind of simplify them in terms of a drawing. Because remember, when you look at these, they can look quite complicated. So we're trying to come up, how do we come up with this top part from various angles? So to start with this is what I'm going to do is that astragalus, we're going to take a look at it like a spool shape, say like this. So the astragalus kind of like that, okay? The top part of where your foot goes is slightly concave. Now I'm turning the sides into a spool shape. The little neck that comes out of it, we're going to look at it like this. So there's a little piece that comes out in the front, okay, that the navicular connects into. So you can simplify that shape as we're just going to bring this piece out of it. So I've got it looking down slightly. So you're just overlapping a cylinder. So you kind of connect it, right? So that's one simple way to simplify it. Sometimes from the front view, we just kind of look at it like this. And this would be the top, this would be the side, this would be the other side, and then eventually the foot is going to sit in here like this, and then the bone on this side is going to be here. So then we see how the tibia sits into the top of it. So we got to try to get a sense of it from various angles. Our first bone being the navicular. The navicular, we can simplify it into this sort of feel. We can simplify it into that because this curves, you're going to have a hard time seeing it here, but it curves around this part and comes way down. So we can simplify it into a nice simple shape from the angle that I'm looking at it here. Our medial cuneiform bone, which is here, from the angle then that I'm looking at it, would be something like this. Everybody, hang on here. I'm going to make that shape just a little better. More like that, okay? Because this piece is going to fit into this piece, so it has a little bit of a curve to it. Okay. Our medial cuneiform bone is going to look like this, and it goes to a point, you could say. Would sit in there like that. And then our, this is the intermediate, and then our last one is going to be here. It's a little thinner. And the only difference to it is this angles. And there's a little bit of a triangle to it. So that's our three cuneiform bones in our navicular and the astragalus that's sitting over there. Now, this is part of what we're calling the ankle system, okay? So I'm showing it to you in this kind of blown up version because when I'm doing the leg with the foot, you're not going to see all these little bones because it's going to be too small. So you want to try to get a sense of what they're like. So the heel system, you've got the calcaneus. And the calcaneus, this piece here, okay, right? So in the back it's going to be a little high. This is just a simple illustration. There's a little saddle in here that the astragalus sits into. So we can illustrate it like that. So you're coming up with a very simple shape, okay? So you're thinking of the form. This is the piece that, of course, eventually the cuboid is connected to, which the cuboid would be here. So I'm going to kind of do a simple version of it here. Now there's two angles. There's going to be this one to this one. So it's going to look like this. Okay, now this plane divides, and it's going to be really hard to see it here, but it's actually this little piece here. There's actually two planes to it, and then there's two toes that connect to it. Okay, so on here, if we go back to this one, if we think a little bit of the toe, we think of it at the beginning as a box shape, say like, they start off like a cube, very much like. And with the cube, it's going to end up into the shaft of the toe, so we think of it as a cylinder, okay? And then that cylinder is going to come down and connect and then the ball sits underneath like this. And that would be of the big toe. So it starts rather boxy. Now you can see it here. It's somewhat of a boxy shape, and then ends with the ball here, more on the bottom. The next one, I'm not going to do them all in here, but I'll show you a couple of them. This would get a little thinner. Toe would get a little thinner. Top piece to it. Ball underneath. Okay? So that's going to be like that on those. On this one, your little toe has a very interesting characteristic, like your little finger. There's a very interesting bend to it that all of us are aware of. And so off of this angle, it's going to look like this. And then the ball's going to be on this side like this. That's a very interesting characteristic. This is going to stick out a little bit, becomes very concave, runs up against this one. And then you're going to get a little boxy shape again here for this toe. And you're going to get the ball, a curve in there. And then of course these toes, the rods are very thin and they curve like this. And then again the ball rides underneath. Okay? And so that's basically the larger breakup of what's going to happen with your foot. So we've got the ankle system, the heel system, and just trying to get familiar with these simple shapes. Okay? So I'm going to get rid of this, and what we're going to do is a foot, and we're going to do it in box. So we need to use now a measuring system. So what you're going to do is take your height, measure it in 3 times. we're going to make 2 of these. Okay, so these are close. We're going to make, on this top one, is what we're going to be doing is the lateral view, and we're going to make a line about here, because when we get into the muscles of the foot, the bones are going to sit here on the lower part, and the muscles are going to sit under the toes underneath. And it's going to be the same from the medial view. So I'm just going to leave a little room in order to set that up. Okay? This one, I'm going to make it just a touch higher now that I look at it. So say about here. Okay, in this first box is what we're going to do is put an X. I want to know where center is, and you will too. Again, doing everything in a measuring system is going to help us greatly, ultimately in the end, because then you're going to be able to memorize this and know where things fall. We're going to put one here too. This one I need the middle. Okay. So what we're going to do with this one as we start it, we're going to start it from this side. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come up with the calcaneus, and we're going to come up with this little saddle in here, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to start it about here, and we're going to then begin to think of this line about here and coming down and coming to about here. Now, the calcaneus is going to sit about here, and probably for the size, I'm going to make it a little bigger. So I'm going to put it in there, okay? So trying to get a sense for how big this thing is going to be. The back of the calcaneus, as you can see, this is the little feel of the saddle and how it might go. And then we get this piece that comes out the back a little bit. And then it comes up. So now we'll refine it a little bit. This is my simple guideline. It's going to come up. It's going to roll down, hit the construction box about here, right? And then we're going to come from there to here. And then this is going to pull up. And it'll start to give us the feel of the back of the calcaneus. Now, the way your foot's going to go, this is going to continue to go up a little bit, at least about the way that I have it here. So it's going to make these subtle shifts that I'm putting in, kind of like this to this to this, rising it up from this line. Okay. And so this little area with the saddle is here. Usually comes up a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little S curve in here like this, because it does do that. And that'll be pretty close to the line, right? Okay. Now, we have to get the calcaneus up there. Calcaneus, or I'm sorry, the astragalus. It's going to sit at a slight angle like this. So I'm taking the axis line about like that. Okay. And I'm going to think about it a little bit like there's a thickness to it, like this. Okay, so I'm thinking of the front of this, okay, to get the little nose sticking out. Now watch the height that I have it, okay. So I've got this up. Now I'm making this way bigger than life, of course. But I've got this bigger, I got this a little higher than my halfway point, because I've got to get enough height on the foot in terms of the shape of it. So then this is going to come down like this. It's going to stick beyond my construction line a little bit. And it'll look like this. So this is the top piece. This, if I completed it, I have it turned towards us a little bit, it would kind of look like this, okay? So there's our piece sitting in there of our astragalus. Okay, now is what I'm going to do is watch the general shape of the foot. And so I'm going to take this and carry it through. And that's going to be our general shape for the foot. This line that I put in is separating now where the cuneiform bones are going to be in the larger group of bones and separating them from the metatarsals. This line coming down further, the cuboid's going to go in here. This might change a little, but I've got a rough idea of where it's going to go. And then the cuboid's going to sit in this area here, which we're going to put in. So that's going to be our rough generalization of the foot. Now, up against this, we're going to get our first bone of the navicular. So the navicular is going to only, it's not real big, so it's from this angle. So it comes to about here, like this. And the navicular is the first field to our construction here. And is what we're going to do is with the navicular, it's going to have two planes to it. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put an angle going out, and this angle I've already got it going in a little bit, but it's going to do this. I know this is small. Okay, so this becomes the side plane. Okay, so that's our first piece, first bone. Connected to that is going to be the cuneiform bone here. So I'm going to take it and run it this way, and there's the division. And this is the next one. This piece has a tendency to kind of narrow here and get wider here. You'll get a little familiar with it the more you draw it. Now the cuboid has a funny bend to it. So on the bottom of it is what happens is there's a little does this, it's a little curve, and then it's got a strong bend like this, right? And then there's one angle, another angle, two angles, okay? And then this part of it is going to connect here. Goes down slightly, and then over. So that's the cuboid. This here is a side plane, and I'm going to shade it ever so little. Okay, So these are the top pieces, which now become pretty clear. Okay, so now this angle that we brought through is the little toe that we did in the expanded view, and it's going to only come to my construction line right here. Makes a concave feel, and then the toe or the ball is going to sit here. Okay, so it's riding along the line, right? So it's concave to convex and doing that. There's another, I'm going to use another little guideline here, and I'm using that for the top part, as I mentioned, with the toes, they're kind of cubish. This one, there was an angle to it like this, and then this went this way. If you remember from the expanded view, so there's an angle here. I'm showing it to you from a slightly different angle, but nonetheless, it's the next one, because there's two toes that connect to the cuboid, right? So this would be the little rectangular area. Now, what I'm going to do before I put the other one in and show you where it goes, because they're going to go behind my first one, I'm going to put down the flanges here. So this would do this. This would hook into the ball, and then it would rise up ever so little like this. The ball would be underneath like this. Okay. So that's, in this one there's only going to be two in the little toe. The other ones are going to have 3 bones. So then this is going to do this. So again, it's going to connect. I'm going to bring it down. So it would take on a shape like that, like a little arrowhead, right? And that would be our little toe. It would come about as far as I got it. The others are going to exceed it, okay? So the next one is going to come in there, and the bottom of the ball of it would fall on this side of our construction line, and it would be low, and it would be in there. This would be my next one. And then my next one. And then my last one, the big toe, you wouldn't see much, but you would see a little bit of the toe doing this. And these would go a little beyond. And that's basically it from this profile. So mostly watching the shape of the calcaneus, the astragalus, how these pieces hook up here, and watching the general characteristic of that foot is what you want to pay attention to. Now, what I want to quickly do is one from the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an X here, and another one here. So now we're turning it and doing the inside, right? And so with the inside is what we're going to watch is roughly where our astragalus is, the calcaneus. So similar, but again, like the back view. I'm going to watch this piece. So we're going to take this and come up with the angle to the calcaneus, this part coming down. This part radically pulling up, coming to our line about here. This would be the little saddle shape in here. Okay, so there's our calcaneus. Now from this side, The astragalus bone has an interesting characteristic. Looks like this, looks like a toe almost. And then this comes up maybe a little higher. So it's this wonderful shape on this side of the foot. So I'm going to try to show it to you, see if you can see it. So this is it. So as you can see, there's this, from this side, this piece takes this real rounded curve. It's best displayed probably from this medial side. This comes up at a little bit of an angle. This is where the tibia is going to sit, is going to come down. And there's little things to it, but there's a little ridge here, you know, because it sticks out. On the inside, this hangs out, comes out a little bit, so you get a little piece like that, because this isn't really sitting directly into the middle of it. So now, our general characteristic is our first toe is actually going to end up on this side of the line. So what I'm going to do is put the ball in there. And this is going to, our first piece of our navicular is going to come off of it like this. And the navicular is going to start there, and it makes an interesting shape where it's going to angle this way, and then around, and then come around, let me see, to about right here. So that's the navicular. Remember, the navicular is curving. When I showed the expanded view, now we're just seeing it from the side. It's curving down the side, so it looks from this side, it's quite large. Okay. The cuneiform, there's going to leave a little triangle in there like that, right? So watch for that. This is going to come this way. This will bring itself around. And then this will come around this way. And this is going to be our first cuneiform bone that's in there. I'm going to put another, simplify the plane a little bit here. Okay. Then we're going to go, now that's falling right about midway. So this is why the X. These bones stop, they start about midway. This is starting right about the same place. So that's why we're using this measuring system. Now you're going to get to the boxy shape of the top of that bone. So again, it's kind of boxy like this. So we think of it like that. And then this now can begin to connect. So there's a slight concave, and it's going to connect this way. And this is going to connect to this piece. So now we've got, now on your fingers like your toes, this ball is important, and the mass majority of it is underneath. But to make your finger go up and down, right, and it locks at the top, your toe locks at the top too, because it can only go so far. These bones, like your finger bones, and we'll talk about them next week, are convex. They're not concave. So I'm trying to take great care to get them a little convex. The underside is more so because this is going to be filled in with padding, okay, eventually, with a muscle. So anyways, we'll go after this one. So this would be a little concave because it pivots. I don't know if I'll get it in there for you where you can see it. But this would pivot a little bit like this, curves. And then you get the feel of, again, that slight boxy shape, right? And then off, you're going to go with it. It's going to curve up a little bit, curve down, and feel. I'm going to get the bottom of it just a little better. So this one I'm going to bring it up even more and then put the ball underneath. Okay, so look like that. The big toe, the same thing. This is going to curve along it, and then it starts off like this. It's going to swing up a little bit, curve down like an arrowhead, up, and then wide to narrow on the underside. And it would come to about there. There would be a piece in the middle here, because there's the cuneiform, the medial one. That would be this one here you're seeing. Actually, you're seeing this one is now this one. If you try to imagine, we're not seeing the ones on the other side. Okay, so this was our ending for the calcaneus, right? So what's going to happen is we would see the toes coming from the underside. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a line about here. And I'm going to put in two other balls. Like that, okay? And then you're going to see the cuboid from the other side a little bit. You would see it like this. And then it's going to come around. You would get to it about like this. That's the cuboid from the underside, right? And then you're going to get the toe, the boxy part of the toe coming this way, of the metatarsal. And then that's going to connect to this. And then this one will connect about there. Okay. And that would be the foot from the medial position. So again, you want to get mostly familiar with this piece, this one, calcaneus, the astragalus, navicular, watching these major points, watching their relationships to each other, and again, doing it in a box like this can definitely really help in order to structure it in the end, okay? So what I'm going to do is get rid of this, and we're going to move on to the leg. So is what I'm going to do, and is what you're going to do, we're going to do 3 of them along here, and is what I'm going to do is put on the profile first of the pelvis. So, like we did with the pelvis last week, you want to measure and figure out your first box, second box, so remember from the lateral view, the pelvis is in 2 boxes, right? Okay, good. Everybody got those boxes set up? On the back of this box, make a line. So, within this, we find our middle. Within that, draw a line. My center's off a little bit, but you know what? It's about right where I want it anyways. So, with this, we're looking at the pelvis from the side view. If you remember, I'm going to go through it kind of quickly, but just to get your bearings. So we're looking for our anterior superior points and the ischium and so forth. So remember the things that we talked about last week. So right away I know the points of the anterior superior iliac spine is going to be here. Okay, so it's going to sit itself there at an angle. Okay, so that becomes our landmark. Now I'm showing you the pelvis, of course, without the rib cage, and last time we were seeing it in context too. But that's where that's going to be. And so there's a lot of ways to make this line, but I'm going to take it like this, and I'm going to see it first as a slight concave. Remember, there's a point halfway because the pelvis makes a slight deviation at that point. And then I'm going to see it as a convex, like, it's easier done. It's hard to talk about it, it's easier to just do it, I guess. And then that's going to roll up, and then right about here becomes a vertical. Okay. So anyways, there's a slight change in there. I think you can see it. That's important. Then in here, on the crest, there is a crest. Right where that deviation is, I'm gonna accentuate it a little bit. Okay. So that's the crest, and it's showing that it's turned. This is turned towards us a little bit, because that's eventually the oblique muscle is going to rest on that, and it's going to become a very important plane for us. Okay. Now the pubic bone from the profile, I take it a little bit lower than midway. Now I'm putting it in the middle of this X because the X is a little lower than midway on my box construction. So this is a little bigger than this, not by much, but so we're going to do that. So we know that this becomes an important landmark. We know that the sacrum starts exactly on that line and the height of our pelvis. So hopefully you guys are getting familiar with these things. So now we're going to go for, this is the anterior superior, we're going to go for the anterior inferior. And so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to make a bend to it. Like that. And then ultimately curving around for the pubic bone. Okay, so what I want to do is make it slightly more clear. It's small, but I think you'll be able to see it okay. So this comes in a little bit, as you know. This comes out almost vertical, angles into, and this is the opening of the acetabulum. So I'm just going to make it a little bit like this, and then the pubic bone. Okay. Now, the ischium is going to sit in, whoops, doesn't come all the way to the bottom. So stop it about there. Ischium. This will connect. Starts off concave, turns convex. Okay, pubic bone. So there's the tuberosity of the ischium, if you remember back. That's the thickness of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a line coming up with roughly where is that thickness. Now we're going to place the sacrum. So this curve that's coming right up against what I have here, it hits high. In other words, it's going to come all the way as low as this, but I'm touching the box here, and then comes around like this. Okay. In there, we're going to get the angle of what this of the pelvis here. Okay, so it's going to go this way. Now the construction line of the box, you can see the angle I have it. It's not as great as that. It goes this way, and then this is going to start to swing at this angle. So it's the back side of the pelvis, right? And then we're going to get the sacrum, you're going to complete it in there like that. Okay. This is our wide point, and we took from the tuberosity of the ischium, a construction line from this point of where the deviation is, a quarter of the way up. We run our construction line. That way it tells us where the acetabulum is going to be, and I'm going to go after it. I might as well go after it now. So I'm going to put it in here. This little line I have out here is the thickness on the outside of that acetabulum. It's nice if you have it on there. If not, don't worry about it. Mostly you need the superior point and the inferior point. Those two are very important to constantly keep in mind. This line, as we talked about, is a little challenging to get, but it's going to curve a little bit. It comes up, it makes its curve around. This angle, be careful with it. It throws me off a lot. So this is going to make its curve up like this. Quickly curves back on itself. This angle that I'm placing parallels the axis line of the pelvis, so it's a very crucial one. And it's going to come, and then you get the point that we talked about, and then that's going to cut into our tuberosity of the ischium, and that's a pelvis for us. So the leg. So what we're going to do, we take the height of the pelvis, and then we're going to go not exactly to the top of the acetabulum, because the ball of the leg, the head, will only go about that high. So follow me now. So I'm taking the pelvis from the ischium to the high point, going from about here and marking it once on this line. So I'll make sure I've got it close, which it is. And now I'm going to double it and bring it down. This is the knee. So again, the knee is found with two pelvises, but when you do measure down, you're going from not quite the top of the acetabulum, but about where I've got it, and that's your first, second. Now if we take that whole thing and double it, take that whole dimension and double it, it's going to come a little lower than I anticipated. So is what I'm going to do, just to make this work a little better. I gave you the proportions, but I'm going to shrink mine just a shade. You'll hardly notice it in the end, but I'm not going to shrink it much. But that is the proportions, if you have it right on yours. So in other words, two pelvises coming this way. Now, actually, mine might not be too bad. Okay, so that's that, and then if you take that whole distance, and then you measure down, good, now it's better, should get to here. All right, so that's the bottom of the foot, okay? So the bottom of the foot is on this line, okay? So is what happens, the top of the foot, I don't know where it is just yet, so is what happens with your bones is the femur bone, the distance of it, ultimately when it's measured in relation to the tibia is a little bit shorter, because the tibia and the fibia is only going this big in relation to here, which is a fifth less than the femur bone. Your arm does exactly the same thing. So it keeps getting shorter as it goes down. So anyways, with that in mind, is what we're going to do is up in this, the ball would be sitting in here like this, okay, of the leg. Yeah, I'm going to make like a little indication of the top of the ball, like, you know, a little concave area, say like this. You'll barely see it, but it helps me get a sense for how it goes in there. The great trochanter Okay, so we're looking at it like this now. The great trochanter, this boxy shape, from this angle is going to look like this. I'll just show you. So if this is the ball, the great trochanter now is going to do this. And this is our back of this is about here. So then the point of the bottom is going to look like this, and then what happens is this line is going to connect to here, and there's a slight graceful S curve that does this, and then this does the same. Okay, and so the femur bone is going to look somewhat like that. Okay, it goes up against the condyle here. Okay, so this piece becomes very important for a lot of reasons. Eventually our muscles are going to connect from the crest of that pelvis over to this point. And so we want to know where that point ultimately is going to be. So with that in mind, I'm going to take about as low as this, similar to what I just did there, and I'm going to place this boxy shape. Now how big is it in context to everything else? I'll show you. It's going to come down to about here, and I'll erase out what's through there so you can see it. It's almost vertical. If there is an angle to this great trochanter, it's not much. So it's pretty close to what I've got there. Okay? Comes down about that low. Now, the bottom of the femur, the condyle here, how wide is it? Good question. Actually, when you measure this, if you're able to see it, if you measure it, it's actually the same distance as this. So, in other words, our great trochanter, whatever you do it to the size of the pelvis, which I've got it about accurate there, is about exactly the same as this is here. Okay. I have to adjust the charcoal just a little bit. Okay, so anyways, those are about equal. And then what happens is this shape kind of looks like that. I kind of think of it a little bit like the back of a golf club, right? Now the bottom of it takes a greater curve because it rocks on the top of the tibia than this does. I'm keeping it at a little bit of an angle, but not much. Okay. So there we go. So now we can take and connect our points. So from here, there's a slight concave. Now, the tibia, I've got it swelling out here, not quite there on this one. If you can see it in here, it is a slight S curve. I mean, it's a slight S curve like this, and it bows out to its widest here. This is really important when we get into the muscles. I'm going to say somewhere about in here is going to be, it shouldn't be where I've got it here. That's off. That's important that you play with this line. And you try to get it somewhat accurate. Let me do it one more time. That's better. Now, where does it connect here? You got the great trochanter, sticks out a little bit, and then this comes in. This, you're going to have a hard time seeing it on this one, but this starts to get wider and angles like this at the bottom. Okay. So that's our femur. Okay. With our tibia from this angle, very curved on the top. And this piece, I'm going to keep a guideline here. This then comes out like a nose shape. You'll see it here. And then it'll come in a little bit. This is very important for your knee. This is the tibia tuberosity, meaning it just sticks out. Eventually we'll place the patella in there. This back piece, it's got a very peculiar angle to it, like this. It's very concave here. This is my center. Now I'm going to drop a center line. Okay, so there's my center line. We need the top of the foot just to get it placed. So the astragalus bone is going to go in here. So the high point of the foot, as we know, actually got rid of the illustration, but you guys will remember, is here where the little nose sticks out off the astragalus bone. Here it's a little lower. So the calcaneus is going to pull back like this, comes up high, and that's going to give us our general characteristic of the foot, okay? This foot, if I take it and bring it up or down, it should be, that's pretty close. When I look at the top to here, it's about a fifth different from this. So that's about how big it would be, okay? So anyways, now we know we've got a general outline, we've got our general shape, we know where things are being placed. So anyways, you take a look at the bone, look at its shape, it's wide to narrow. We watch the side, it's concave here because of the fibia bone. So is what happens also with it, there's a slight S-curve to it. So with the tibia bone from the side, I'll just show you just a little thing here. This takes an S-curve like this. So the bottom's going to look like this. So this feel of this shape you want to get familiar with, okay? Actually, this lends its way, this curve lends its way to the top of the foot in just kind of a really nice way, okay? As it comes through. So you want to get used to how that curve goes. So with this, I'm going to place in that curve. And then this angle would do this. This on this side, I'm going to get rid of my guidelines because they're going to get in the way. And then there'd be a little concave area right here, because this sits on top of that bone. Okay. The patella is going to sit in here, about right here. And there's a top plane to it, like this. Watch the top plane. I'm going to try to make it as clear as I can. And then this part of the patella is important. There's an angle coming out the top, and then it turns this way. that angle, and I'm making it a little larger than what it is. It would normally come down to my construction line here, but I want you guys to really see it. There's an up plane to it, okay, and then a down plane, the up plane short. Eventually, when you start to drive these muscles, they're going to come to this, and it's important that you have the right combination of shapes. So our muscles are an echo of the bones, and that's what so many people don't understand. I didn't for many years. In other words, the muscle we're going to place in here is going to echo the shape of this bone. These will also do the same, and this lends its way to the tendons and how it's going to flow. So to understand the bones is a big step into understanding the muscles. So anyways, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail with the foot because time's going by. But as we know, this comes out like this, up, down, and then over this way, giving us the feel of the calcaneus. And then we know that the calcaneus, because we did it, this is coming out to about here. And then we took a line and ran it here. The cuboid was in here, which turned this way. And then, of course, our other bones were placed up in here, which I'm just going to suggest that, okay? The little toe came out like this, and then we found this division of the metatarsals, because this is on a journey down, these come out this way, so there's a change of plane in that direction. The little toe, very concave there, very convex there. Again, this is very small, and then this is doing this, okay? And then our next one came, and our next one came, and they keep going a little longer than the next. That one keeps going a little longer, and then they begin to go in this direction. So I'm going to keep them very much like that, okay? That's our first view from our profile. Now we're going to quickly do a back view. Okay, so I just want to make sure this is close. And it is not. I'm glad it can come up a little bit because it might help out in the end. Okay, this is better. Make a box there. I'm going to have you make another one because we're going to do a front and a back. All right. It's nice if you're able to get them on the same piece of paper next to each other so that you can see their characteristics. Okay, so what we're doing is, like we did last week, we got to turn this into 4 boxes, right? Okay, so I'm just going to measure them really quick to make sure they're just close. Okay, they're close. Anyways, our pelvis from the back view, you've got these 4 boxes. Again, just to keep us going with the construction, we'll do this over and over, and you guys are going to get really used to doing this. Time we get to the muscles, you shouldn't have to struggle with this too much anymore. Remember, we dropped the vertical. Why do we drop the vertical? Does anybody remember? Remember, we're trying to get the 3rd measurement, so we're going from this point to here. And then where they cross, I'm kind of getting a little sloppy with it. Where they cross this line you drop a vertical. Okay, if all goes well and you got the lines pretty close, this distance should equal that distance, should equal that distance, and they do. So we're on our way here. So with this, remember our combinations, this middle of this is the pubic bone. So all of you should be getting used to visualizing this now. From the back view, this is really a convex rather than a concave shape, the sacrum. So I take an angle, say like this, and then an angle like this, and try to get them close to symmetrical. Okay, so this is going to be the sacrum. We've got it in the right place. Now we're going to come in about an eye width. This time I'm not going to bring the pelvis out to the width of the box. It does come up a quarter. This should be a quarter. Maybe it should have been up a little higher, but it's close. So I'm going to come up to here. I'm not going to come up. So usually on the female pelvis it would touch this construction block. I'm going to make it narrower, just so that you can see the differences of the two and what happens. So I'm going to do the same here, and I'm going to make this a little narrower than our box. So now we're free to make this line, and the same here. And remember with the back of the pelvis, this line came to here, this line came to the sacrum. And then we took off of our center line midway, we made a point, because different from the front view, this is now angling this way. This is now angling this way, okay. We also, if you remember back to last week, I had you angle this below the construction line at a little angle. And then, I'm going to get rid of these guidelines. And then we put the crests, because this is the superior posterior, came way out and down below the line and like that. And that gave us the feel of the crest of the back of the pelvis, okay? So from these points, we're going to find the ischium. Remember, we find the ischium by taking this vertical. Uh-oh, those are not even. Close. Okay, so not going to the bottom of the pelvis of the construction block to get our bottom line. Okay. Ischium. Pubic bone from the back view, it's the opening there is going to make a strong curve up like this. And then the ischium is going to sit in there. And that defines our pelvis for the most part. I'm going to box it out by doing this. That's our general basic shape. Now is what we're going to do is come up with this all-important line, this one here. So remember last week we took it from about the middle, it crosses over. This curve is actually this curve, and this is this. And then this is concave up, about to there, convex to my construction line. We put the little feel of the process on there, and we bring this on the inside, giving us the tuberosity of the ischium. This the same, kind of concave, convex, and we've got our shapes. Again, keep playing with this characteristic of the pelvis from all angles. Trying to get that line, you'll start to get real familiar with it. Pubic symphysis, and then connecting these points. Okay. Now, from our back view, remember, this takes a strong feel coming around. This is our acetabulum. It sticks out very little concave. So I'm trying to make this real pronounced just so that we can know exactly where the acetabulum is, because that's what's a big concern for us today. Okay, so now drop this line. All the way through. So the same is going to hold true now if we take a pelvis and we come down, say here, not exactly as high as the top, but here, I'm going to draw it across so I know exactly where I'm at. So I'm taking a pelvis, now coming down from the acetabulum there, my first point. Second, double that. And we come down to the feet. Okay. So, is what we're going to do from this back view now is the neck. The neck, it's at an angle. So we're going to do this. From my construction line, I'm going to pull this down. From my construction line, I'm going to pull this down. Our neck. The great trochanter. Now, what's interesting about it, if you had this on a vertical, it would sit at the right angle there. This is at an angle. What angle is it? You can always know it because it's the same angle as the pelvis. So that little boxy shape, it will break through this usually a little bit, and it will come down to about where I did the other one. It's about as big as that. Again, you're the widest at this point. When you run a line out, you're the widest at that point. And eventually the gluteus medius is going to connect those pieces together. So, now if you notice how I drew it, my line less up here, more down here. So this parallels the pelvis. Breaks the box slightly. Okay. So I want to make sure these are close to the same. They are. Okay. So what we're going to do now that we know roughly the size of the great trochanter, we can get the size of the knee. So I'm going to place this one about here, this one here. Is what happens with the knee on the inside from the back view. There's a slight angle in. The width of it is the same as the great trochanter. So we're here. These condyles are really based more on curves. I gotta keep remembering I'm doing the back. So you get one there, you get one here. Okay. To complete this is what you're gonna do. There's a ball in there. You'd only see part of it. Hopefully you can see this on the thing. I'm going to do this on this side. So imagine a ball in there, right? From the back view, this line, now this is a little bit of a refinement, but I do want to show it to you, take the moment to do it. This is really concave. So if you refine it, if you look at it, it's a concave line, right? It has importance to it. And then this is the head of the ball. And then the neck is what happens if you watch it. It's going to take a curve going this way. And this one, longer coming down. And that's going to sit it in there for you. So we do the same on this side. So this is concave. Got our feel of our ball in there. And so this is going to come up this way, and this will come down low this way. Now, the last part to this gray trochanter, this isn't in the end, this isn't rectangular on the top. It's a curve. And so most of us just from this point bring up a little angle, chop this off, and wrap it around. That's all it is. So I'll give you a repeat performance on the other side, and that gives us the right feel of what we're looking for. And then I know right where this point is, I know the femur bone drives from that line down, okay? So we take from this point, it goes up a little, and we just wrap around the curve for the outside of the great trochanter. Okay, so from this, now I can visualize this angle because it's going to do this. And one of the characteristics of what we're about to do is this does this and then it curves out more. So you're doing this and then there's a strong curve and meets it this way. This comes right from the line we talked about. Less curve, if you've got it right. So it would look like that on that side. Okay, so we're going to place in the other one and do the same. Well, I'm trying to get that line just a little straighter. Better. Okay. So, the back of the leg, you get the two big condyles. Okay. So on there, place two big knuckles, right? Concave, concave in the middle. Same on the other side. Concave, okay. Now we're going to drop our vertical line, vertical line. Feet, we'll keep them close to this, or about there. One thing hard, working large and things getting low, you can't tell how big they are. Okay, so our very last part of our puzzle is what's going to happen here is we're going to take the bottom here on the lateral side, on the outside, we're going to bring up the, hopefully that's it, we're going to bring up the back of the calcaneus. And it's very straight here, and then it makes a curve this way and comes down. Okay, about like that. Now I'm going to make this probably a little larger than it ought to be. Okay, so we got both of those in place. Now, on top of this, on the inside, is what happens is this astragalus sticks out. So this, the little curve of it is going to do this. There's a little shelf here, and looks like that. So on the other side, the same thing's going to happen. So watch as you develop your own. Okay, about like that. We're going to take the outside and show very little, but I am going to show a little bit of the foot. The astragalus now, top piece, sits a little bit on this side like this, and this side is kind of not straight, but straighter than this side. This side rolls down. And we're going to put a little bit of the side of the foot in there. Okay, like that. This side the same. So we've got that coming. We're going to take the astragalus and put it up here. Okay, so we get a little bit of the outside foot. Trying to make it just a little thinner. Looks a little wide. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, so now we're ready to develop the back. Back of our leg, back of the tibia. So you're going to do this. It's got a curve to it. Comes in a little bit. Watch slight convex quality to it when you guys do them. Take the other one. They're coming in a little bit too, by the way. Now, one of the characteristics of the back of the leg is the outside is more concave when you move it into the shaft. So this gets very concave and then comes down. Let's bring it down to about there. Then the one on the other side is a little wider, like this. This pulls in, now the inside of your ankle. So this is doing this, and then this is going to pull way out. And then this sits on top. So one of the characteristics of the inside of your ankle as it swings way in and then sits and wraps over that astragalus, comes across the top. There'll be a slight angle here, and then the bone comes up, okay? So this comes out very little, and then these two meet. Looking very much like that. The fibia on this side, think of it as a little curve up in here, convex, and then it's going to come like a little teardrop. And then on this side, the styloid process wraps up a little bit and then down. Okay. This is very concave, meets this part that sticks out, very thin, gets very close together here, okay? And then on this very strong angle, the bottom of the fibia comes out and around like that, and that gives you the angle to your ankles doing this, okay? And that sets up against that bone. So one's high, one's low. The back of your leg will look like that. So one on the other side, very much the same. I will place it in kind of quickly. Our outside is going to angle in a little bit. Now we know why there's a concave there. Sorry guys. Okay, here we go. And then this is going to swing out. Wrap up and around. This one on this side comes in. So this is, got to keep this one high, of course. Wrap it through, slight angle, bring back the edge of the bone. Outside, feel of the fibia, top part, and then kind of convex, meets there, gets very narrow, hides behind there, and then rides along the outside of our leg. Okay, so it gives us the outside. So that is our back view. Okay, we've got one more view to conquer here. I'm going to adjust my charcoal just a second, and then we're going to see what you remember about the pelvis from the... Okay, so find our centers. Check them quickly, make sure they're close. All looks so good. Find your centers. Once you have those, again, we're trying to find our third measurement. Drop your vertical line between from the two angles. Find the pubic bone, which is in the middle of our bottom boxes. This time, concave for the sacrum. The line above, turn that into a slight concave as well. We're coming in on the outside about an eye width. We're going to come up a quarter, but we're not going to touch the edge of the box. We're going to keep it like the back view, and then we're going to come up with our crest. Same with the other side. From our crest, we're going to bring in this part of it. Now bring this, different from the back view, bring it beyond this vertical line, and then come up with our convex line, and then a concave line. And as you know, our spine would sit in there. Okay, pubic bone, about as wide as that. Keep lower one incredibly straight. Find your verticals, drop them to the ischium. So I'm going through this part of it really quick just because all of you, we've done this last week and you should be pretty familiar with it. Verticals. From that, same as the back, place in the ischium. Same with this. Remember, they're like the heel of your shoe at an angle in that corner. Say like that. So we can now box in our pelvis. Now we need the inlet. So remember the opening curve. This one from the back view, of course, would swing way up like this because of its tilt. This picks up, remember, the curve of the sacrum and comes around, picks up the curve, comes around. All right, pubic symphysis, and then the ischium. Okay, so now we're ready for the crest of the pelvis and the crest on this side. Okay, from this point, now we need our inferior point. Bring this angle in, out, and over, very much like that. Same on the other side, bring it in quite a ways, out and around. The acetabulum sits right at that line, extends out very little, like that, extends the same on the other side. Okay, last piece to the puzzle. Pubic bone in the bottom is going to connect to here with a strong curve. And our pelvis is in place. Same thing now, drop our vertical line. Knees, this time we're just going to carry these across. We already know the measurements. Bottom of the foot. Carry that across. From the front view, very much like the back, put in the angle of the neck. Put your, everybody remember the name of this bone? I'll let you figure it out. So this is, one's gonna be in here, that box shape. Remember, this one I've got, usually they stick out a little bit. This one happened to fall inside, but they're close. I'm gonna check their sizes. So this one is important today that these sizes are about accurate, very accurate. Okay, so now the ball goes in. The acetabulum is usually, especially from the front, you'll see it's going to look much bigger than the ball that goes into it. So let's do it like this. And then this is the curve of it. The neck will then be there. The neck in this one comes down like that. The same with this, put the ball in the socket. And once you do that, put down the curve and our neck. Neck is important. Longer that neck, the faster the person is. Animals are really long. Okay, so our great trochanters are in place. The only thing I'm going to do is, like before, I'm going to put a little bit of an angle here and bring out a curve a little bit, not a lot. Okay, so from the front view, our knees, let's place one here, and we're going to put a slight angle going in, slight angle going in. See if these are pretty close, close. Again, we get our size off the great trochanter, so measure the width. Try to keep them close to the same. Bring it up and around. Little, on the bottom, little convex, concave movement. These things are really based on, those condyles are really curves. We kind of use boxes a lot, but we could do them like that. So the same thing that happens from the back to the front. So we're going to hook this right up to here. This line is going to be driven in and then out. Okay, so again, if you kept going with it, it would be like this. So there's a great swing. Again, that's going to affect our muscles once we get into them. This is set up right. There should be a very subtle movement, so that should work well. The same is going to happen with this one. Okay, so femur bone is in place. Tibia bone, well, let's do this. Come up with our verticals. Height of the foot, we'll keep them roughly the same. And I guess we'll take it about there. One way you can tell is take this, measure it in, close. Maybe make the foot a touch bigger, not much. Okay. So, our top of our foot is going to be here. So this is the astragalus. And this is our medial side and our lateral side. Okay, so if you remember our lateral side, a little more of an angle. This is our lateral side. I'm going to put a little more of an angle than this one. Eventually this is going to curve up a little bit. And what we're going to do is generalize this now with a triangle. So on this side, it's going to stick out wider triangle, this side less. The other side, we're going to do the same. Astragalus is going to sit here. Inside, it's going to be a little bit of an angle eventually. So on the inside, triangle, wider on the outside. Slight turn. Try to keep them a little more symmetrical. So it's going to have that as a general characteristic. Now, with our tibia bone from the front, it's coming around this way. This is doing this. Now, what's interesting with this, there's a triangle here. On that triangle, there's a ball. That's the tibial tuberosity. You want to do that. This is it here. This is it here. Tibial tuberosity. So, just like this, on our lateral side, this is concave. We know now why it's concave, because of the fibia bone. And this is about like this. Now I'm going to put in a general guideline here for me, and the same with this. I'll stop it at about there. We're going to do the same with this side. We're going to put a concave general guideline. And we'll stop it about there. Now, the interesting thing with the front view, there's a little S-curve, like on all of these, on the front view, and this is what you're going to have to take note on the skeleton for yourself in the class. This shin bone sticks out. So this point is close to us and this is far. It's kind of like a little prism shape in a way. And that isn't straight. There's a little S-curve to it, and it starts from the outside and it comes around and then swings through, as I'll show you. So the way to find it is from the lateral side, and it does this. And that little shin bone now takes a slight curve this way, and then swings this way, and then this is the line that picks up the inside of the ankle like this. And then that sits on top, and then we get our little angle that we talked about, and then this connects to this side. So anyway, so there is the shin bone, and it's off that shin bone line that we get this great curve for the inside. And then this part meets it about there, okay? So this curve you want to watch for on the model. It's very prominent, and it's going to become very important as we get into the muscles. This on the other side then, the foot, this is our high point. That high point is going to run down and somewhat looks like this. So if this is the inside of the foot, this makes a curve like this, and then this curves out this way, and it makes this sort of a feel. And this is the high point, and this curves, and this the big toe being here, and then these start to fan out and go in this direction, giving us what they call the dorsum of the foot. Okay, and so this being the high point here, this is, if you had the astragalus here, it would be looking like this. And then this is the tibia bone wrapping itself over that, all right? And then on this side is the fibia coming up against here, and it gives you the feel of the foot, okay? So on the side here, you get the fibia. So that's doing that, and it comes out a little bit, the styloid process. And it's kind of, top of it's long like that, and then it becomes very narrow and meets here, very, very narrow. And then it comes to the side of our foot, sticks out a little, and comes here, giving us the lower ankle. And so then you get our strong diagonal here. And then the foot takes on this, as we're talking about, this kind of characteristic. Eventually, the navicular, this is an interesting thing from the front, but it sticks out a little bit, creating an angle here. And then usually the big toe will stick out a little bit, create an angle here. And then the toe, it would be in here, so it does that. So this is kind of a series of angles. And then the next toe will be in here and so forth. The patella, just to finish this off, the patella, when we looked at its shape, started off like this, and then there was a little side plane to it. Side planes on the patella are important. Then it's going to come down to right about the break here. It's going to do this. And then eventually there's a strap, a tendon that connects these points to the tibia tuberosity. So eventually this line fouls a tendon, and it's going to do this and connect it together. And this is just hooked together with a muscle, and that knee just floats in there. So on this side, the same thing's happening. So is what we do is we take from the outside. I'm going to do it kind of quickly, and then it swings around. And then it comes out. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of that left leg. I'll get messed up. I'm wondering why my curve isn't looking right. Now I know. Still thinking of the other leg. So here we are. So this swings, and this comes around, and then out, and then rests on the astragalus, comes up, slight plane in, and then this meets it. Okay. Fibia bone on the outside, same thing. I'll just make this cleaner. And then on this side, connects, and then again picks up down here, and then gives us the inside ankle. Okay. This would probably swing up. Navicular, I'm not going to develop this whole thing, but navicular would be in there, right? Little bone sits there, and then it becomes a little straighter. Stick doesn't work well this low. And then that does that. And this is our high and low points. And our toes begin to branch off from that point. Okay. Last piece to the puzzle. And this is our patella. Okay. So, this is where I will leave you. Again, some of the very important points. Again, it's the relationships. That's why we're doing this in a system. trying to get how big one thing is to something else. It is important to draw these bones independently to get familiar with their shapes and their characteristics and how to draw them. And then the next part is to do them in relationship. So keep developing those sketchbooks, and I will see you in class on our next date.